Have you ever met someone who's the warmest person in the room, until suddenly they're colder than ice? That's the enigma of the INFJ. Known as the advocate among personality types, INFJs often seem like empathy machines, deeply attuned to other people's needs. But here's the twist. Under certain circumstances, that empathetic glow flips into a frosty chill. You might wonder, how can someone so caring turn so cold? Let me tell you a story. I once worked with an INFJ colleague, Lisa, who radiated warmth until a team member dismissed her ideas. Suddenly, Lisa grew distant. Her words clipped. It's a pattern I've seen countless times, and it comes down to a psychological concept called self-protection mode. Picture a turtle, soft on the inside, but when threatened, it retreats into a hard shell. For INFJs, their cold side is that shell a defense mechanism rooted in deep-seated fears and sensitivities. So, why do the world's most compassionate people sometimes act harsh? Let's peel back the layers and see what triggers this INFJ transformation. Let's dive into one of the biggest triggers, the INFJ's fear of abandonment. Now, before you dismiss this as simple insecurity, consider the concept of attachment style, the psychological blueprint for how we connect or detach from others. INFJs are notorious for what's called the door slam. Imagine this. After months of patience, empathy, and second chances, the INFJ suddenly cuts off contact. It's abrupt, final, and often leaves the other person reeling. Now you might be thinking, isn't that a bit extreme? But for INFJs, the door slam is an act of self-preservation. When they sense rejection or betrayal, their nervous system think amygdala hijack goes into overdrive. To protect their fragile emotional core, they shut down, sometimes without warning. Let me ask you, have you ever sensed a friend pulling away and responded by pulling away even harder? That's the INFJ's paradox, desperate for connection, but terrified of more pain. So, when INFJs act cold, it's not because they're heartless. It's often because their fear of being left behind has set off an emotional alarm bell. What happens when an INFJ feels betrayed in a relationship? Here's where things get complicated. See, INFJs excel at emotional attunement. They notice tiny shifts in tone, body language, or text responses. But this superpower can backfire. Suppose their partner starts acting distant, distracted, or less affectionate. The INFJ's mind races. Are they losing interest? Is there someone else? This is known as catastrophizing, a cognitive distortion where worst-case scenarios overwhelm rational thought. Now, instead of asking directly, the INFJ might withdraw, become curt, or use passive resistance, delayed replies, vague answers, or subtle sarcasm. It's not about punishing their partner. It's about avoiding vulnerability, as if saying, if you're going to hurt me, I'll hurt you first by not letting you in. Can you relate to this? Maybe you've witnessed a friend turn icy after a miscommunication. It's their way of preempting pain by controlling the narrative. Understanding this harsh INFJ reaction isn't just about labeling it as cold. It's recognizing the underlying fear and longing for security that drives it. Let's switch gears and talk about the professional world. What happens when an INFJ feels replaced or undervalued at work? Here's where we meet the phenomenon of role invisibility, the sense that your contributions are overlooked despite your best efforts. Imagine you're an INFJ on a team project. You spend hours perfecting presentations, offering support, mediating conflicts. But when the boss praises someone else or brings in a new team member, suddenly your motivation disappears. You might withdraw, stop volunteering ideas, or even start resenting the team, a classic case of emotional disengagement. Now you might be thinking, why not just speak up? But INFJs often struggle with assertiveness deficit. They fear rocking the boat, so their frustration simmers beneath the surface. I've seen this firsthand. An INFJ friend who went from office MVP to the quiet one in the corner after being sidelined on a big project. The solution? Recognizing this pattern, acknowledging the hurt, and learning to communicate needs before coldness sets in. That's easier said than done, but it's absolutely possible. When INFJs get angry, it rarely looks like shouting or confrontation. Instead, it shows up as passive aggression, moody silences, procrastination, or evasive replies. Psychologists call this indirect expression of anger. Let me give you an example. An INFJ feels slighted by a friend's comment. Instead of saying, "That hurt my feelings," they might become suddenly unavailable, cancel plans, or give one-word texts. The underlying mechanism? Emotional dissonance, when you feel anger but can't express it directly, so it leaks out sideways. This can confuse people around them. Is something wrong? Did I do something? The INFJ's emotional radar picks up on others' confusion, which can add guilt and reinforce the cycle. Now, you might be asking, why not just be honest? Good question. The answer lies in the INFJ's aversion to conflict and their deep-held belief that expressing anger will damage relationships. Breaking this cycle means learning to distinguish between healthy assertiveness and damaging passive aggression, a critical skill for every INFJ striving for authentic connection. So, how can INFJs move from harsh withdrawal to healthy connection? It starts with emotional sobriety, the ability to sit with feelings without letting them hijack your actions. Think of it like learning to surf. You can't stop the waves of emotion, but you can learn to ride them. One powerful tool is identifying triggers. When do you feel the urge to go cold or cut someone off? Is it after a perceived slight or feeling left out? Naming the trigger is like flipping on a light in a dark room. Now, you might be thinking, but what if I'm too vulnerable? That's where boundary setting comes in, protecting yourself without shutting people out. It's not about building walls, but about using gates you can open and close. Let me tell you, I've seen INFJs transform by practicing gentle honesty. Hey, I felt hurt when you did X. Can we talk about it? It feels risky, but it's the path to real understanding. Remember, being a harsh INFJ isn't a life sentence. With self-awareness and courage, that coldness can melt into the genuine warmth that makes INFJs so extraordinary.